At my daughter's wedding, I kept quiet about the $48 million I inherited from my late husband, and the only reason I stayed silent was because of the look on my new son-in-law's face. The way he scanned the room that night still sits in my memory like a cold hand on my spine. He wasn't admiring the flowers or the vows or the family dancing. He was studying people, calculating them. And when his eyes paused on me, something in his expression shifted. Not recognition, not warmth, something more predatory. It was the same look I'd seen once before, years ago, back when my husband was still alive, back when he warned me that wealth, real wealth, brings out two types of people, protectors and predators. I had no idea, standing there behind a vase the size of a small tree, that I was watching a predator identify his next target. But the twist, the part no one saw coming that night, was simple. I wasn't nearly as harmless as I looked. 2 hours earlier, before anyone raised a glass or wiped a sentimental tear, I'd stepped into the bridal suite to help fasten my daughter Lily's dress. She looked radiant, trembling with that emotional excitement unique to brides who believe their life is beginning in that moment. I kissed her cheek and whispered how proud I was, and I meant it. Her groom, Daniel, seemed devoted, attentive, in a way that, at first glance, felt earnest. He had manners, a polished charm, a softness around Lily that made her eyes glow. I won't lie, I wanted to like him. I wanted this day to be perfect. But there was something else I needed to do. Something quietly tucked into the seams of this celebration. I had promised Lily I would not make the wedding about finances or about Dad's estate. She hated how people treated wealth like a character rather than a fact of life. So I kept my lips sealed. I didn't mention the inheritance. I didn't mention the trust. I didn't mention the instructions my husband left in a sealed envelope that I'd opened only after his funeral. But that silence, my silence, was the very thing that opened the door for what came next. During the reception, I noticed Daniel watching me. Not in a familial, I hope my mother-in-law likes me way, more like he was trying to solve a puzzle no one else could see. Every time our eyes met, his stare sharpened. And every so often, he'd lean toward someone, his cousin maybe, or one of his business friends and whisper something, glancing back at me like I was part of the inventory rather than part of the family. I brushed it off. Weddings make people strange. But my stomach tightened each time he looked at me with that quiet calculation. I'd been underestimated before. Usually by men who mistook soft voices for soft minds. Daniel, I suspected, was the same type, polished outside, hollow inside. The first real hint came later in the evening. Lily was off taking photos, and I was cornered by one of Daniel's friends, a man named Seth with a slick smile and awful cologne. He introduced himself as if I should already know who he was, then asked what I did for a living, not in a curious way, in an evaluating way. "I'm retired," I answered politely. He smiled too widely. "Comfortable retirement?" "Comfortable enough." He nodded, glanced across the room toward Daniel, and smirked. "Yeah, that's what he said." I felt a small flicker of something unease, maybe. Why were Daniel's friends discussing my financial comfort? Why did they seem relieved when I confirmed it? 30 minutes later, I understood more than I wanted to. Daniel approached with 2 glasses of champagne and asked if we could catch up sometime this week. I smiled, assuming he wanted to bond as new family. But then he lowered his voice. "It's about future planning," he said. "For Lily, for you, for all of us. Future planning. That phrase has brought trouble more times than I can count." But I played along. He suggested dinner on Tuesday, a quiet place downtown. Private, he emphasized, in a tone that felt practiced. I said yes. Not because I trusted him, because I didn't. When the wedding ended and everyone vanished into the night, I returned home, slipped off my shoes, and opened the small wooden box my husband left me before he passed. Inside, Beneath the letter I'd read 100 times were 2 items: a key to a secure vault I hadn't yet opened, and the business card of a private attorney my husband insisted I should call only if someone tries to put their hands where they don't belong. I didn't know what he meant at the time, but after the way Daniel had looked at me like I was a vault he needed the combination to, I suddenly understood too well. On Tuesday evening, I arrived at the restaurant early. Daniel showed up 10 minutes later wearing a suit that looked more expensive than the salary he claimed to have. He ordered an upscale wine before the server even asked what we wanted, and for the first 10 minutes, he was the charming son-in-law he'd shown everyone at the wedding. Then the mask cracked. He eased into questions about my house, my future living arrangements, and whether I'd ever given thought to simplifying responsibilities. He said all of it gently, as if he were doing me a favor, as if the subtle push toward dependence was charity rather than control. I kept my face soft, my voice softer. When he finally pulled out a folder from his briefcase, I felt a wave of cold run through me. He slid the papers in front of me as if presenting a birthday card. "I know this might seem sudden," he said with a slow exhale, "but my firm works with families in transitions. There are safeguards we can put in place for you, for Lily, so nothing complicated ever happens with your estate." There it was. Not even a week into the marriage. Not even pretending to be subtle anymore. I opened the folder. Power of attorney. Co-management of assets. Automatic authorization for financial oversight during periods of diminished capacity. All the standard traps. But here was the twist I didn't expect. Each document was branded with the logo of a company I'd never heard of. Archer and Lane Financial Advisory Group. The name meant nothing to me then. But the next day, when I used my husband's secure login to run a background check, the results made my heart pound. The company wasn't a local firm. It wasn't even a real advisory group. It was a shell organization linked to a private network known quietly in the financial legal world for one thing. They target wealthy older women with hidden or unprotected assets. Widows. Divorcees. Inheritances. They track marriage announcements, obituaries, real estate purchases. They use sons-in-law, caregivers, romantic partners. They embed themselves into families with frightening precision. They weren't amateurs. They were professionals, and Daniel worked for them. Not by chance. Not by coincidence. By design. My hands trembled not from fear, but from the realization that he'd chosen Lily for a reason. Not love. Not companionship. Access. He had married into my family for one purpose: to get to me. Suddenly, the looks at the wedding made sense. The whispers with his friends. The certainty in his eyes when he said, "future planning." He believed I was alone, vulnerable, unaware. But there was one thing Daniel didn't know. My husband knew networks like this existed. He'd warned me not directly, but through the layers of protection he'd left behind. And the inheritance, the full 48 million of it, wasn't as accessible as Daniel thought. It wasn't even in my name. Not fully. It was guarded by something Daniel had no idea about. I closed my laptop slowly that night, letting the truth settle in my bones. If Daniel was part of a professional scheme, then I needed to become something the scheme wasn't prepared for. A widow who didn't scare easily. A widow who didn't sign anything she didn't understand. A widow who had 48 million reasons to fight back. As I stared out the window at the streetlight flickering on the empty road, I realized something else, something darker. If Daniel married my daughter to get to me, then Lily wasn't safe either. I wasn't dealing with a greedy son-in-law. I was dealing with a network that had already woven itself into my family. And they thought I would walk right into their hands. They had no idea that I was already sharpening my claws. The morning after that discovery, I woke before the sun. There are certain moments in life when silence feels heavier than noise, When quiet isn't peace, but pressure. That morning was one of them. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and went through every memory of Daniel I could recall. The questions he asked at the wedding. The eyes evaluating my dress, my jewelry, even the modest car I arrived in. I realized he hadn't underestimated me because I looked weak. He underestimated me because I looked ordinary. Good. Ordinary women are invisible to men like him. By noon, I'd contacted the attorney whose business card my husband left me. Victoria Hale. Her voice was crisp, alert, the kind of tone you only hear from people who know exactly how dangerous the world can be. I explained everything, Daniel. The documents, Archer and Lane, and the background check. When I finished, she inhaled slowly. "You're not dealing with a misguided son-in-law," she said. "You're dealing with professionals who specialize in financial extraction, and they do not stop willingly." "I'm aware," I replied quietly. "The question is, what to do next?" "What we do," she said, "is make them show their hand, and then we cut it off." By the time I ended the call, a plan was already forming. Not the kind filled with anger or theatrics, the kind filled with patience, precision. My husband always told me that true strategy wasn't about hitting first, it was about letting the other person believe they were winning until it was far too late to escape. So I waited. And like a man who didn't know he'd already been caught the moment he walked into my life, Daniel made the next move. 2 days later, Lily visited me. I could tell she was rehearsing something, her fingers twisting the strap of her purse, her smile too practiced. "Mom, can I ask you something? And please don't get upset." I braced myself. "Ask." She hesitated. "Daniel said you seemed overwhelmed at dinner, that you might need help managing things. Finances, decisions, the house, just everything." The words stung not because she believed him, but because I recognized the technique. These networks don't just target money, they target relationships. They isolate their victims by using the people closest to them. "How long has he been talking to you about my state?" I asked. "A few days," she admitted. "He said he's worried about you being alone in such a big house. He said you seemed confused at dinner." Confused. The same word he'd used in the documents. Diminished capacity. They were setting the foundation. I felt a slow heat rise up my spine, not anger at Lily, but at the man who manipulated her. "Sweetheart," I said gently, "your husband is not worried about me. He is worried about something I have that he wants." She blinked. "What are you talking about?" "Your father left me a significant inheritance, more than you know." Her lips parted in surprise. "You never told me." "Your father wanted protections in place until I decided you were ready to know. And I didn't tell you at the wedding because I wanted the day to be yours, not overshadowed by assets." A pause. Then, almost whispering, "How much?" 48 million. She sat back like someone had pulled the air out of her lungs. The shock was obvious, but beneath it, something else flickered. A terrible realization. "Is that why Daniel—" "Yes," I interrupted softly. "Your husband knows, or at least suspects, and he is not working alone." For a long moment, she was silent. Then she whispered, "I think I want to believe you, but he's my husband. Mom, please don't make me choose sides yet." I didn't ask her to. I didn't need to. Truth has a way of revealing itself when you let time sharpen it. After Lily left, I called Victoria again. "He's trying to use my daughter," I said. "He will," she replied. "That's the common entry point. But we're ready. Are you willing to play along?" I thought about my daughter's hopeful face, about the trust she placed in the wrong man. I thought about all the widows these networks had drained dry, one signature at a time. "Yes," I said. "Let's end this." The plan was simple on the surface, complicated in execution. Daniel needed to believe I was warming to his ideas. So the next time he called voice sweet, falsely concerned, I apologized for being overly cautious. I told him I'd been thinking about his proposal. I pretended to feel overwhelmed. I pretended to be uncertain, vulnerable, grateful for his help. He took the bait so quickly I almost laughed. "That's wonderful," he said, relief seeping through his polished voice. "We can go over everything together, maybe even schedule a notary," exactly what Victoria predicted. But the real trap was already set. We scheduled a follow-up meeting at my house. Daniel arrived wearing the same expensive suit, carrying a thicker folder this time, one with "Consolidated Family Management Agreement" on the cover. A new tactic. Instead of pushing my vulnerability, he framed it as family unity. I invited him into the living room, served tea, and let my hand tremble at exactly the right moments. He began laying out the documents on the table as if preparing a feast. "This first packet," he said, tapping the pages, "allows us to coordinate decisions, simplify your obligations, reduce financial stress. You wouldn't need to handle things alone." I looked at him with soft eyes. That sounds comforting. Inside, I felt nothing but ice. He handed me a pen. "There's no need to overthink it. This protects everyone." But he made one mistake, just one. When he shifted the folder, a page slipped out just enough for me to see the letterhead. Archer and Lane, Division 3. Division. Meaning multiple branches, multiple regions, multiple active operations. I wasn't dealing with a small scam. I was dealing with a web. I set the pen down. "Daniel," I began slowly, "I have a question." "Of course," he said. "What does your company get out of this?" His jaw tightened for half a second, just a flicker, but unmistakable. "Nothing," he said too quickly. "This is personal. For family." I smiled softly, the same way I'd smile at a child caught in a lie. "Daniel, sweetheart, you're not very good at pretending." He froze. The room seemed to shrink. The soft hum of the refrigerator grew louder. Outside, a lawnmower droned faintly. The world going on as if this moment weren't changing everything. Then he laughed, but not kindly. "You think you know what's happening here?" "Oh, I know exactly," I said. "I know who Archer and Lane really is. I know what your division does. I know you didn't marry my daughter for love." His face drained. "You married her," I said quietly, "because you thought I was alone. You thought I was naive. And you thought you could take everything my husband worked for." Silence. Then anger flickered across his features. "You've been digging where you shouldn't." "I've been protecting what's mine." He leaned forward. "You're making a mistake." "No," I said softly. "I'm ending one." Before he could reply, someone knocked on the door. He stiffened. "Are you expecting someone?" "Yes," I answered calmly. "My attorney." His face paled. The door opened, and Victoria entered crisp suit, sharp gaze, the type of presence that made predators shrink. Behind her were two investigators from a private compliance agency that specialized in financial exploitation cases. Daniel shot to his feet. "This is harassment." "This is prevention," Victoria responded coldly. "And by the way, your entire division has been under review for 6 months." That part wasn't true, but he didn't need to know that. All he needed to feel was pressure. Daniel tried to gather his papers, but one of the investigators stepped forward. "Leave everything on the table." "You have no authority." "We have enough," the investigator cut in. "You distributed unlicensed legal documents to a protected class individual. That alone is actionable." Protected class individual. Elder exploitation risk category. The kind of language predators don't expect their victims to know. Daniel's hands trembled. His confidence cracked completely. "You should leave," Victoria said sharply, "before this becomes criminal instead of civil." He faltered. Lily won't believe you. She already sees the signs, I whispered. And when she learns what you do for a living, she'll walk away from you on her own. He glared at me with a hatred so sharp it could cut glass. This isn't over. It is, I replied softly. You just don't know it yet. He stormed out of the house, leaving his documents scattered like broken pieces of the future he thought he could steal. The moment the door closed, Victoria exhaled. That went well. Messy, but productive. Is it enough? I asked. It's enough to bury his company if they push further, and if he tries to retaliate, we escalate. But the real escalation came sooner than either of us expected. That evening, Lily arrived at my house in tears. She'd confronted Daniel, told him she needed space. He'd lashed out verbally, not physically, but enough to expose who he really was. She wasn't ready to leave him fully, but she was no longer blinded. She collapsed into my arms and whispered, I think I married a stranger. No, I whispered back. You married a man who wore a stranger's face. The next week, Archer and Lane sent me a letter. It was clean, cold, written by someone who believed they were invincible. They claimed Daniel acted independently. They claimed no wrongdoing. They claimed my accusations were misguided, but they made one mistake. They asked me to sign an agreement preventing future misunderstandings. That was enough to expose intent. Victoria drafted a response so sharp it could cut stone. The investigators launched a formal complaint, and I, armed with the inheritance my husband left and the protections he built, became the very thing this network never expected. A wealthy widow who wasn't afraid of a fight. Within a month, the Archer and Lane division collapsed under scrutiny. Their shell corporations were flagged. Their internal messaging leaked. Their financial funneling patterns exposed. And Daniel? He tried contacting Lily. Then he tried contacting me. Then he tried intimidation. Then negotiation. Then threats. Every attempt documented. Every attempt forwarded to investigators. Every attempt building the case. Finally, one quiet morning, Victoria called me. It's done, she said. Their entire operation has been suspended. Individual agents will face charges, Daniel included. I closed my eyes, letting the relief settle deep in my chest. But she wasn't finished. There's something else, she said. Something your husband might have anticipated. She told me that the vault key my husband left, something I still hadn't used, was connected to a set of encrypted documents detailing the exact legal structures he put in place to protect the inheritance. And beneath those protections, a list of names. People he suspected might target his estate after he passed. People connected to networks just like Archer and Lane. Daniel's name wasn't on it. But his employers were. My husband saw the predators long before they saw me. I opened the vault that afternoon. Inside were financial instructions, legal blueprints, and one handwritten note. My love, if you're reading this, you're stronger than whoever tried to test you. Use what I built, use what I left, and never let anyone mistake quiet for weakness. I cried for the first time in months. That night, Lily called, her voice steadier than before. Mom, I filed the papers. I'm leaving him. I felt a tightness in my chest loosen. I'm proud of you. She hesitated. Was he ever going to stop? No, I said gently. Men like him don't stop. They just move to the next family. But he chose the wrong one. Yes, I said softly. He did. Weeks later, once everything was settled, once Daniel was out of our lives and Archer and Lane was under federal review, I sat alone in my living room. The house was quiet, peaceful, warm. I thought back to the wedding, to the flowers blocking my view, to the predator staring at me from across the room, believing he saw an easy target. He didn't see a widow with $48 million. He didn't see a woman who knew exactly how to protect herself. He didn't see the husband who left her a fortress disguised as a quiet life. He only saw what he wanted to see, and that was his downfall. Because the truth is simple. The most dangerous people in the room are often the ones everyone overlooks. And I've been overlooked my entire life. Not anymore.